We're back. As I mentioned earlier, if you think you may have missed any of the critical information that is being shared in this series, just replay the video as often as necessary to get a firm grasp on what it is that I'm trying to teach. The first component in this paradigm that I'm sharing with you, these 5 simple steps for leadership and administration and organization of a ministry, is what I call recognizing needs. Now, if you were to survey a group of people regarding their needs, that you will note an interesting phenomenon. All external things being equal, people will list needs differently. Often when one person considers a need, another considers a luxury. On the list of priorities, one person will rate a need high, while another will rate it lower. Recognizing needs on the part of leadership has to overcome that subjective component that exists in a congregation or in a community about what people's needs are. For instance, I may feel like I need a cup of coffee in order for me to get going in the morning. But do I really need a $4 cup of coffee to get me going in the morning? Now, some people may say absolutely yes. Some people may say, no, I can get by with something cheaper. That's the subjective component. But the need itself, the fact that you may need something to stimulate you and to get you going in the morning, that is a real need. So needs, as a general rule, can be sorted into 4 categories. And out of those 4 categories, we have 4 subcategories. But let's talk about the 4 major categories first. There's a chart available in your notes that will help you to understand what I call this needs grid. I call them felt needs, or needs that a person is aware of. A second category are unfelt needs. These are real needs that a person may not be aware, such as an unbeliever may not be aware that they need to be saved, but it's a legitimate need in that it is, but it's not felt. Next, I call them legitimate needs, which are things like food, air, water, security, love, salvation. And then there are what I call illegitimate needs, luxuries that are supposed to enhance the quality of our life, but which are frills that we can live without. As a matter of fact, these illegitimate needs often may be detrimental to your personal growth and your development as a child of God. And so not only are they illegitimate needs, but they also create a whole new host of illegitimate needs that crop out of us trying to meet our real needs through illegitimate methods. Along with these 4 categories of needs, there are 4 categories, subcategories that fall under the definitions above that need to be mentioned. The first is what I call felt legitimate needs. These are needs that a person may experience. They know that they're real. They need a job because that job provides them with resources by which they can pay their rent or their mortgage, put food on the table, clothing on their back. It's a real need. They know and they feel it. A second need is a felt illegitimate need. These are needs that we think we have, but upon closer inspection and comparison to biblical truth, we come to understand that these are not needs at all. For instance, I may feel a need to buy a boat. Now, if I'm a commercial fisherman, that may be a legitimate need. But if I am a struggling family that has limited resources and I just like to fish, then I don't really need a boat. I'd like to have a boat. So this may be a felt need, but it's an illegitimate need based on discerning and understanding the situation that you find yourself in at that moment. A third kind of need, subcategory, is what I call an unfelt legitimate need. This is a need that forms the basis for much of our confusion. A person may feel an emptiness or a void in his or her life and misinterpret that feeling. He may feel that everything is fine, yet in light of biblical teaching about his eternal destiny, all is not well. So there is an unfelt legitimate need. You may not know that you need to get saved, or you may not know that you need to prepare for life's uncertainties, but because you don't feel it, you don't recognize it as being legitimate. And we can't go by the subjectiveness of feeling. We have to be able to discern, not only biblically, but looking around us and commonsensically understand that there are needs out there that are legitimate, but they are unfelt. Christian ministers and leaders and teachers, they find their role includes helping people to come to grips with needs they don't even know they have. And then the fourth category is what I call this subcategory is an unfelt, illegitimate need. These are the domains of the enemy. The principalities of darkness find this playground to be infinite. It is the basis of much of Western civilization's advertising and propaganda. The marketplace is saturated with attempts to make frills and frivolities look and smell and taste and feel like real needs. But these needs are not real and are best left in the unfelt category. So how do church leaders evaluate needs? So that the church's time, energy, and resources are used to address the real needs of the congregation. Again, the starting point is in the leader's understanding of biblical truth. Leaders cannot allow a worldview or a philosophy to dictate to them what a need is. A clear understanding of what the Bible says an issue is and it's understood biblically is essential. For example, if a church is involved in ministry in a location where poverty is prevalent, the church might choose to address poverty in its mission statement. And upon researching what the Bible says about a Christian's responsibility to help the poor, it cannot assume that the standard approach of feeding and clothing the poor will meet the needs of that particular community. The standard approach for ministering to people who are in poverty is to give them stuff. I worked in an urban environment for 20 years where we planted a church in a poorer community. And we found that there are a lot of other dynamics that are at work in that community than just the fact that they are missing material possessions. Yes, indeed, they may need food, they may need clothing, and they may need other things, but those may be a needs list that's lower on the priority than some of the underlying reasons for why that poverty exists to begin with. So a church leader must be immersed in the Bible so that their solutions will be ultimately biblically based and they are God's solution. In the appendix of the notes that you've been given, I did an in-depth study of the book of Proverbs alone to list a variety of reasons why poverty exists and a number of approaches in addressing poverty. Simply handing out food and clothing may not be an effective solution to the underlying reasons for why that poverty exists. So see your notes in the back and see the study that's been done, and you'll understand that poverty is a lot more complex than people not having material things. Now, once a detailed understanding of biblical truth has been achieved, the leadership team can then proceed to the next step, which is to take the working knowledge that they have into their planning session. But a word of caution here. A complete understanding of biblical truth is not always possible. So we must be willing to keep an open heart and an open mind to the fact that new information may be needed to be factored into your equation as you are planning and as you are organizing to address a need. But we should never allow that to stop us from doing something, but we must always have as our priority to understand what the Bible says as clearly as possible. The leaders of the church must be committed to exploring biblical truth as far as they can. And then the plans that they develop to address the needs will only be as good as their biblical understanding of an issue. A legitimate need will fit comfortably into a well-crafted mission statement. And then addressing that need from every angle possible through that mission statement, you plan to meet the need, and meeting the need can take place. Now, this approach must be used in identifying as many needs of the church as possible. It may take a brainstorming session with the other leaders in your church to create a list of all of the things that need to be done or that need to be addressed. And once these needs have been addressed, then you can take some time to prioritize those needs. But once the needs are determined and researched biblically, the next and final step must be undertaken before a plan can be developed. And that is this, that through prayer, discussion, and consensus on the part of the church's leaders, the needs will be prioritized. You will find out what are your needs in terms of outreach and evangelism. What are your needs in terms of the worship needs of your congregation? What are the needs in terms of the fellowship and the encouragement that needs to take place? What are the needs of the instruction where your church needs and your people need to be taught so that they can understand what the legitimate, real needs are in a community or in a church? Some needs are more urgent than others. And even when those other needs are biblical needs, you must still prioritize them to ensure that your best energy, your best resources are being given to the priority needs. And some needs, although urgent, may have to wait because necessary personnel or resources are not available. Other times, abundant resources are available to meet other less pressing needs, only to keep the church busy, but never fully accomplishing much. So sober judgment and discernment is needed if the church is to be meaningful and relevant. A commitment to prayer, to Bible study, to fellowship and community, and reliance on the Spirit will help the church leaders in properly prioritizing the needs of the church. But recognizing the need, defining it biblically to ensure that you are addressing a real, legitimate need is critical in the leadership and administration of your church.